Mycoveria Scientific Limited carries out aflatoxin supply of equipment. Yes, when I talk about aflatoxins, what do I mean? Most people would rather understand it as the recent scuffle we had with Kenya over not allowing our grains, claiming there was a poison in those grains. That poison is known as an aflatoxin. To another person, I would explain aflatoxins as when you keep maize as a best example. When you keep it and it's not so dry very well, what happens? It gets a little moldy, it can turn black or yellow sometimes. That mold starts secreting a poison that is very carcinogenic. Most times in the animal industry, you find that you're giving your feed to birds that is contaminated, all the birds die. That is really not so good. Imagine if it can do that to poultry, what can it do to us humans? This mycotoxins is poor handling, starting exactly from the farm. Yes, how do you handle your grain from the farm until it reaches the plate of the consumer? Usually farmers tend to store their maize, keep it until the prices are rather high to get better market or better pricing, which is very good, but how are you handling it? When you make those conditions very conducive, for example, you're not drying your maize very well. The warehouse you're keeping it in is not well ventilated. It's keeping a lot of moisture in. How often do you dry it? The overuse of fungicides people usually spray their crops even after harvesting. That alone increases the chances of these aflatoxins in the different grains we have. I will answer that aflatoxins, you cannot see aflatoxins. But what brings aflatoxins? When you keep maize, when you keep soya and it becomes moldy, what do I mean when it becomes moldy? In Uganda it's called okumba. Yeah? So it gets a little black, it turns to yellow. It's not even that hard. That is a typical sign because that black thing on top of it is the one that secretes the poison. So most times when you take your maize or your soya or your coffee for sale, they will give you a low price because it is not of good quality. Our primary goal as Mycoveria Scientific Limited is to supply equipment that can be used to test for aflatoxins as well as reagents. And we also go ahead not only to do that, but we also offer other services such as training your staff on how to do good manufacturing practices, hazard analysis at every point of production. Because remember, as I said, that this starts from the farm to your plate. Yes. So if you can try to control, the best way is how do you reduce them? If I test and I find that the mycotoxins are heavy, I'm not going to give you money. Yes, so how best can I reduce them? We advise on that. We supply you with laboratory where, as you can see, these are our different kinds of tests. A consumer may come and wants a specific test. We look for these. These are not made in Uganda because there are low technology levels that are still down, but we are trying to make sure that they can be made available to our potential consumers. This mycotoxin testing is an entire process. You do not need one machine. However, primarily, this is the machine you didn't boast because at the end of the entire process, you need this machine to count for you what you need. This is called an ELISA well reader. Why it's called an ELISA well reader? It's called a well reader. These are what we call wells. Yes. Each of these represents one sample. Yes. One sample, I mean one truck. We test from different sacks, we mix it up and we get one sample. This is what I call a sample. This machine is good because it can run 96 samples at the same time, maximum. Yes, if you're a person who is having like 90 trucks, 20 trucks, it can run it, but it does not work alone. This machine works alongside other equipment because you do not put a whole grain into this well. It has to first be crushed using a grinder. We use pipettes, things like pipettes. We use pipette tips. We also use things like filter papers in this process. We use a grinder. We use beakers. We use aluminium foil to intubate. And we also use methanol as well as distilled water. This is all an entire kit. Okay, the percentages that I will say is depending what is your primary source. What is your primary reason why you're doing this? If you're a person dealing with export, different countries have different standards. A country will be like, me, I want maize, or I want grain, I want soya, without any aflatoxins. Yes, that one you'll have to look for another market. Another country will say, me, I don't want more than 10 parts per billion. So if this is printing out and it's showing you 20 parts, you cannot sell. However, you'll have to look for another consumer who can take that up. However, that is not the end of the world. Most times with the increasing technologies, people have come up, there is what we call toxin binders. Consuming that maize is not so good for human health. However, for other animals such as livestock, there are things such as toxin binders you add in so that it does not affect the poultry and also doesn't affect you when you take it up. This is called a moisture meter. Yes. A moisture meter is used to analyze moisture, or rather known as water. In maize, it can be maize, it can be soybean, it can be sorghum, it can be sunflower, different kinds of rice. Yes, this is only an example, however, there are different kinds. This measures surface moisture. What do I mean by surface moisture? I lift it up, I pick a sample without touching inside, without picking it using my hands, because our hands also tend to have some water to it. So I pick it without, and then I cover, and then I press my own button to measure any kind. But what sample have I put in? Have I put in beans? Have I put in maize? As I've told you, this one measures different kinds. So for example, I've put in sorghum. I look for sorghum. There is maize, there is wheat, there are oats, different types of coffee, different types of rice, until I get my sorghum. Then I press OK. Within less than a minute, I have my value. After getting that value, I will know what am I having. If the value is much higher than the percentage that is recommended for keeping in a warehouse, I will have to come and dry it. If it is low, then I know that I'm on the right step. I can keep my grains. Avoiding mycotoxins, okay, with the recent technologies that have come up. Firstly and foremost, I would really advise a farmer. I would really advise a farmer to carry out good post-handling procedures. How do you handle your maize? How clean is it? Again, I would also advise a farmer to purchase these products. These machines may be quite expensive, especially for a peasant farmer. However, what I really advise, can you group up? Can you group up as a team of 10 farmers? This is 3.2 million. But if you can group up as a group of farmers, this does not require electricity. It requires batteries. I can be like, hey, I need to use this maybe to measure my moisture quantity, and then I give it to another farmer. This is 22.8. However, if you're a group of farmers, it makes it much cheaper for you. You're only going to use 28,000. Unlike a person who is going to take and they use 150,000, imagine that per truck. That is quite expensive. But if you can purchase it as once, as a cooperative society, as a group of farmers, it is much cheaper for you. Still, again, I recommend the best thing to do is try to avoid these aflatoxins. You may test, but you may not get your right price. If you're testing and you find they're high, there's a price you desire always when you're growing. You want a better price. But if you test, you find them there, yes, you may be able to sell, but for a lesser income.